Omaha's news leader, chronicling the stories and people making a difference in our community. This is KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle.
We're simply doing our part to get these people the heck out of, get them off of our streets, get them out of our communities, and get them the heck out of here.
Clink it's a throwback to Hogan's Heroes and the German war camp.
They are calling it the Cornhusker Clink. Nebraska's new proposed immigration detention center comes with a lot of controversy. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rob McCartney. It's one of the latest plans of the Trump administration to house certain immigrants, changing McCook's work ethic camp to a detention center. Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen and a number of others support the move. This morning, we're hearing from him and also the director of the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services about some of the concerns with the camp, specifically capacity and safety, as they transition from a fairly low security work ethic camp to a higher security holding center. And we're going to speak with an immigration lawyer about the rights of detainees. First, the announcement. It was made August 19th, and Chronicle's Pete Cudahy reported how the nation was looking at McCook.
The site currently serves as a work ethic camp. It's home to 186 detainees who are considered low to medium risk. In a statement, Governor Jim Pillen mentions ICE encounters with an alleged MS-13 kingpin and murderer in Nebraska playing a role in the partnership of the detention center. Despite the work ethic camp dealing with low-risk individuals in the past, NDCS says it's prepared for the change.
It's just another population for us to manage.
Those currently detained in McCook will be moved to other facilities in the state, making room for what's being called Cornhusker Clink by the Department of Homeland Security.
We're anywhere between the next 45 days to 60 days. We can probably make this happen.
The partnership provides the federal government with a strategic location and advances the Trump administration's directive.
It provides a central Midwest hub for ICE, and they were able to see the value in expanding and being able to provide services to other surrounding states.
As of now, we know that this will be paid for with federal dollars, and the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services says that as soon as they get the people who are in the work ethic camp out, they're ready to work with ICE. Reporting from Omaha, I'm Pete Cudahy, KETV Newswatch 7.
Now, you heard Corrections Director Jeffries talk a little bit about the new population they're going to have to manage. More from him on how they plan to do that in a few minutes. First, Governor Pillen sits down with Chronicle's Bill Shammert addressing who would go to McCook and who'd pay for it.
Is there any concern with putting people who might be here illegally, they've been here 10, 20 years, they don't have a criminal record, with drug traffickers and sex traffickers in the same facility?
Yeah, well, I want to make it crystal clear. I am not supportive of that, and that is not what ICE is here to do. ICE is here to focus on criminals.
Do you support any sort of pathway to citizenship for those families we talked about?
I support making sure that the federal government, the politicians quit being goober politics, and I support getting people together and solve the problem. Finding a solution, because we have to have the workforce. Anybody talking about massive deportation? No, I'm 100% opposed. It's crazy.
I want to talk about the finances. How is this going to work? You have said this will be federally funded. Does the federal government give Nebraska a pool of money, or is this like an expense report? We track hours, we track miles, and give it to DC?
Yeah, so the bottom line to run that facility, it's in the next 2 years' budget. It's about $10 million a year. We will be paid by the federal government per bed, per diem, per day. Yeah, it's going to be good business for Nebraska.
So is it your belief this could be a financial gain for Nebraska?
Not my belief, it will be a financial gain.
What's your timeline?
Timeline is, I love to use John Wooden quote, right? We're going to go quick, but not too fast. We're not like other places talking about stuff. We're ready to go. I would hope we're operational in 45 days.
The McCook facility, they have said they want up to 280 beds. Is that up to 280 beds for ICE holds, Or is it the 200 that are there now, they will stay there, and then 80 additional?
The folks that are at the facility now will be mixed into other facilities in the state, and this facility will be exclusively ICE. My goal would be that it's really simple. I've been through it with Director Jeffries, and we'd be able to do it really, really safely with dignity to run that facility at 300 people.
Well, not everyone is on board with this new role Nebraska could take in the immigration issue. August 22nd, a couple hundred people marched on the governor's mansion. They want him to stop the project before it starts up. Representatives from several nonprofits spoke, as did Omaha State Senator Margo Juarez.
It is so wrong, even from a legal perspective. And I don't understand, why are we going to allow this to happen?
Now, Juarez plans to visit the facility, make sure there is oversight and accountability for the detention center. Well, oversight and accountability are a major concern. So are the rights of the detainees and what rights they have, if any. So here to discuss that and more is Brian Blackford. He is an immigration attorney. Brian, thanks so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, first, if someone is detained and they're here illegally, I mean, they theoretically should be detained. Do they have any rights? Do they go through the normal legal process?
They do have limited rights. Unlike criminal detainees, for instance, they are not assigned an attorney by the state. They have to pay for their own attorney to represent them and really try to enforce those rights. Often being detained in ICE custody is an agreement between ICE and that facility. The only time we hear about anything that is maybe not up to par is if they report it back to us, and then we pursue any legal avenues that we have. But it's much more limited due process rights that immigrants have than those that are, for instance, U.S. citizens.
Are they required to report who they have?
That's just it. I mean, we're entirely dependent on what our clients report back to us. And oftentimes ICE will have conversations with our clients without us knowing unless they report it back to us. So that there are concerns there that we have with what's being said, what's being signed without our knowledge.
What if someone is here, they're detained illegally detained? I mean, they shouldn't have been sent there in the first place. Any recourse they have? There's actions that are called habeas corpus. You can file that in federal court, for instance, if we believe our clients are unjustly being detained. But if they're otherwise eligible, they can go through an immigration court system and apply for a bond. But it just kind of depends on their immigration and criminal history. And we see some people detained from Glen Valley Foods here, right?
Absolutely.
How long can people be held?
Well, that's interesting. It depends on the case. People that have removal or deportation orders that are final, sometimes they can be up to 6 months or more as ICE effectuates the removal. Otherwise, if they don't have that removal order, it's just dependent on whether the immigration court can get them in for a bond hearing and when. And then thereafter, we've had some issues now with ICE, opposing bond, unlike in the past in the same scenarios. And so those are where these habeas corpus actions in federal court are playing out as we speak.
So right to a speedy trial, that's null and void in this.
It is, and especially given the backlogs in our immigration court system, it can be weeks before they have an initial bond hearing, and then thereafter, whether they're released at all is dependent on how ICE reacts, if they appeal or not, and then if they do and effectuate this automatic stay of being released on bond, even if they have the money to pay their bond, that's having to go through the federal court system now.
Wow. And what about visitation? I mean, can people visit those who are detained, or could there be a situation where they don't even know where they are?
Well, initially it can be tough, even as an attorney, to find out where somebody is being held. Sometimes it can take a day or two to find out. There's supposed to be an online detainee locator through the ICE website, but that's not up to date sometimes. So again, we're dependent on our clients, sometimes their family getting accurate information, relaying it to us, and then us tracking them down. But as an attorney, we do have the right to call and visit, more so than the families do of those that are being detained.
Are there any standards for living conditions?
They do have basic rights, all detainees do, and again, like there's an ICE detainee handbook that is given. It's largely though dependent on the facility and if they're grouped in with other detainees and that facility's policies in coordination with ICE.
I mean, I see one of the concerns I think with people, they hear other countries where people are just taken in the middle of the night and they disappear, they're never heard from again. Is that just too far out to even consider, or are we theoretically getting close to that?
I mean, there are definitely reports, and this has gone through the court system and different courts around the country where people were, removed without access sometimes to counsel, or at least adequate access to counsel. And with ICE, because it's federal law, they can transport people at their mercy and at their whim wherever they want around the country, and even to other countries. There are more efforts now to remove people to third countries where they have no ties to, so you can have people from Asian countries go into African countries, even sometimes war-torn African countries, where their lives are also at risk there, and they have no connection to those countries whatsoever.
Can detainees do anything from inside the facility? Once they're detained, can they fight the process, or do they have to find someone like you somehow to do it for them?
Theoretically, they can represent themselves on their own, pro se representation. That's not definitely advised in the immigration system, where there's so many complex laws and ever-changing policies. So realistically, they do have to find an attorney, and again, at their own expense, and go from there to see what kind of rights they have, if any.
Finally, then, Brian, what is your biggest concern here?
My concern is just right now with policies that are changing, that, under prior administrations, even the first Trump administration, things, whether that's the interpretation of existing laws or even policies that once were in effect that we all followed, we were all grown accustomed to, we could properly advise our clients on, they're changing. Those are no longer what's going on as far as, again, being able to pay bonds that normally, we were able to in the past. And then, yes, people being transported much more regularly and frequently without our knowledge. And so access to counsel, again, that they already have to pay for, that's getting much more difficult these days. So we do have concerns with just our clients who do still have due process rights and do have, rights under the immigration laws. Sometimes those aren't being followed, or at least it's much more difficult to, get those to be followed by ICE and our clients to really exercise those.
All right, Brian, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, one-on-one with Rob Jeffries coming up, the head of Nebraska Corrections, talking about the extra security, politics, transparency. It's when KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle continues.